course, the primary responsibility falls on the state members of the United Nations, who must recognize and promote the right, individually and collectively. This is what the Charter of the United Nations also says, together with the treaties. For human rights, peace, security, and stability to flourish, the relationship between peoples and governmental entities must be based on a genuine and continuing consent, on the understanding of and if and if this contract is violated by the government or governments, the people as a sovereign have the democratic right to redefine that relationship. That is something which is very crucial and important to bear in mind when we talk of the right of self-determination. Indeed, if we go back to the historical perspective of right of self-determination, the most important step in this direction was the Vienna Declaration of Program of Action, which was adopted in 1993. I don't know about Alpha, but I was present at the conference throughout, and that conference recognized the right of self-determination, and in its preamble, it stresses in Part 1, Paragraph 2, all peoples have the right of self-determination, taking into account the particular situation of peoples under colonial or other forms of alien domination or foreign occupation. The World Conference on Human Rights recognized the right of peoples to take any legitimate action in accordance in the Charter of the United Nations to realize their inalienable right of self-determination. And of course, Article 1 of the International Covenant on Economic and Social and Cultural Rights and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights equally recognize this right of self-determination. Now, in progressing the right to self-determination, the process of decolonization, which commenced somewhere in the 1960s, is not, in my opinion, complete in any way. The process needs to be put in place and it needs to be enhanced, with particular reference to Alaska, about which my friend will speak in due course, and Hawaii. Self-determination as an issue is very crucial to the people of Jammu and Kashmir and Palestine. And there's no doubt as to that these people have not been yet granted this right at any given time. Of course, the people of Kashmir are going through a very difficult period, particularly since the nationalist government has come into force in India. But that itself does not mean their iron rule or their most difficult situation in the world, that the people's right of self-determination is gone away. That still remains, and that's an outstanding issue under the United Nations resolution. So on this particular point on self-determination, I started by saying, giving the two quotations from a great person. He sits to my left. That's Professor Alfred Desais, who has given these definitions to us on self-determination. I particularly wish to draw your attention to two of his reports, which is United Nations reports, A69 272 which was on 7th August 2014. And prior to that, there is A68/284 of 7th August 2013. I would very much insist that those who are in for to know much more on self-determination to go through these reports, and that will give you a clear understanding what it actually means. I particularly wish to refer to A69/272 report, which at paragraph 69 and little n is there, where Professor Alfred Desai's quotes, and I will read it only in part, it's a very long one. The General Assembly may consider revisiting the reality of self-determination in today's world and refer to the Special Committee on Decolonization, about which I talked just now, and or other United Nations instances, communications by indigenous and unrepresented peoples wherever they reside, inter alia, in Alaska, and then he gives a whole list of states and countries and nations and unrepresented peoples. This is something which is very important to understand. With these opening remarks, I believe that you have a general perspective of self-determination and human rights, but much more in depth, of course, in this matter, is the very expert sitting next to me, as I said, and Professor Alfred Desai. I'm sure you are very much aware about him. He has been working on human rights almost throughout his life. He has been here with the Human Rights Committee for about 25 years, sir? Correct. 25 years. And then he has been 6 years expert on the promotion of a democratic and equitable international order. Now I give floor to him. Give us much more in-depth knowledge of self-determination. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Majid, and thank you, Ronald, for organizing this. And our good friend, Professor Curtis Billworth, who's also been a professor at the Geneva School of Diplomacy, lost his voice this morning. And I know he sent us some slides. I don't know if we can show them, where we have the equipment to do so. On the other hand, since he was supposed to do the history of the concept of self-determination, and I was supposed to do the practice and the newest developments. And I don't know, if you want to show the slides, you can do the slides, you can do it, because I mean, you put some work into it. If not, I launch into everything. But essentially, I want to give you the bottom line of this session ahead of time. I mean, the bottom line is, you can understand that since 1945, there have been hundreds of wars whose origin has been the unjust denial of the right of self-determination. It's not self-determination that causes conflict. It's the denial, therefore. And what is essential to understand is that the realization of the right of self-determination is a conflict prevention strategy. And what's the United Nations there for but to prevent conflict? I mean, number one concern of the United Nations is peace. And if the United Nations takes it seriously with peace, it will have to look at the root causes of conflict. And peoples do have this natural law
intervention, and you had it. He is, of course, research professor of law at the University of Kenya, Sierra Leone, and proprietor of the law offices. Now, we will have, I think, our technical man is disappeared. Oh, he is here. we have a short video from another panelist, Rania Madi. I understand it's for a couple of minutes. Okay. Can we have, she is the one who is promoting human rights for Palestine. So can we have it, please, sir?
I would love to thank you a lot for this great panel, self-determination and human rights, and to include me, and I'm sorry for not being able to. First of all, the right of self-determination. When the concept of self-determination was first evoked during the First World War, it was taken to mean the right of the people to determine its sovereignty over the region where it lives. It was a principle that President Wilson endorsed before this country even joined the war. Although the right of self-determination was not incorporated into the text of the Charter of the League of Nations, it was implicit in the discourse relating to the protection of minorities and that of the regulation of the mandatory system. It was only when the UN Charter was formulated into the wake of the Second World War that self-determination was openly and clearly mentioned in Articles 1 and 55 of the UN Charter. Israeli settlement policy in the Arab land it's occupied constitutes a clear violation of the rules and laws of military occupation pertaining to the Hague Agreement of 1907, that the Geneva Convention and the Geneva Convention of 1948, including their two appendix. This article will show that Israeli settlement policy also violates human rights principles and infringes of the right of the Palestinian people to achieve self-determination, a right which has been guaranteed them by international law, the UN Charter and the various other international agreements. And here I want to jump to 2012 when we got a great resolution adopted in October, which draws attention to the legacies of colonization, including to the context of the declaration, which guarantee independence to colonial countries and peoples, and to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And we as a people and NGOs, we were completely participate in the implementation of the plan of action. The Palestinians are included in this resolution, especially after many reports recognize that the ongoing occupation is considered not just as a system of apartheid, but as well a colonization. This is why, since more than 74 years, we notice that the Israeli continue violations of the Palestinians' right. This is what prevents the Palestinians to get to their right of self-determination. I thank you a lot.
Well, thank you very much for that short intervention from Rania Madi. Now we move on to my very dear friend, Ambassador Ronald Barnes, who has been working relentlessly on the issues of human rights, on the issues of self-determination, and on the issue of Alaska and Hawaii. He has been working very hard, and he has been here for more than 25 years within the four walls of this building, and he has made significant, of course, progression on the issue of Alaska, and he probably is the best person to talk about Alaska. My dear friend, my dear brother, Ambassador Ronald Barnes.
Thank you, Barrister Majid Trambu, and thank you, Alfred, both of you. Of course, Alfred did do an expert visit to Alaska, and in a previous panel, he said that in the referendum in 1958 on Alaska, that the United States military was paid $5 to vote yes, which he discovered to be true. The American citizens voted where if you look at Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, the General Assembly said no, under the factors and principles created by the UN Charter, General Assembly resolutions, that the citizens of France cannot vote. It is not a province. Tunisia, Morocco, Algeria are not a province. In fact, Article 1.2 of the Charter says if you look at the principles that were established under the equal right and self-determination principle, the historical development, it's very specific. And in the Friendly Relations Declaration, Alaska, Hawaii, etc. are separate and distinct. We are not a part of the administering power who is supposed to bring us to a level of self-determination, a sacred trust responsibility under Article 73 of the Charter. Alaska Indigenous peoples are the peoples concerned as a Kanaka Maoli under the Kingdom of Hawaii. And it's very clear, there is a double standard. Why did they do something for Tunisia, Morocco, Indonesia, and not for Alaska and Hawaii? What some states, or one state in particular, said during the adoption of 1469, said this is nothing but democratic despotism. This is a gift to the United States of America, since they were instrumental in defeating the Axis powers in World War II, and you grant them as this gift to United States of America, Alaska, and Hawaii. And they went further than that. They said, you're not going to do this to African states, and these were African states who were saying this. We have too many African states to decolonize. So, if we had indigenous states who were to advocate for us in 1958, 1959, when General Assembly resolution was adopted, then we would, or if the U.S. took the responsibility to address the provisions, what you call factors and principles under Article 73 of the Charter, but we would have had a legitimate vote in Alaska. As such, because they said that the land is for the settlement of the white race, and that we have to live up to the superior genius of the ascendancy of the European civilization. Two Supreme Court decisions, one in 1823, the J.B. McIntosh case, and the 1955 Teton case, which said it's for the white race, which Alfred did a memo on prior to the end of his tenure as the independent expert. It's apartheid. It is a crime against humanity. We have crimes against humanity, genocide in North America. We hear a complete double standard in the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, where they yell very loud about other states committing. You have situations not only, I won't mention them, I'll stick to the issue of our indigenous and our right to self-determination for us. But the fact is why is nobody saying anything about the United States or Canada, all the little children's bodies that are being discovered, that they're being dug up. At first there was over 200, now they're in the thousands. This was in the 50s and 60s, and this was legislation, this was approved by the monarch of United Kingdom, and it's written their names on there. So we have not only the United States, we have Canada, we have Great Britain, and many in Europe who are accused of democratic despotism, who are creating double standards today. And some of this happened less than 50, 60 years ago. And there was a 97-year-old lady who was brought to justice for the crimes against humanity during World War II for the Jewish peoples. Why does it apply to other peoples and not to us? It's because of the inherent racism, that is, as Alfred Desire says, is tantamount to crimes against humanity. So what do we have for us today? Today we have what the 107th CERD committee stated at the end of its session, that we have two ways to address the right of self-determination or the right of peoples. Through the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. The second one is through Human Rights Council Resolution 487, which speaks of General Assembly Resolution 1514 of 1960. And it also states that we are to be invited to the 4th decade on decolonization, for the eradication of decolonization. So what we're waiting for now is for states to implement what was adopted in Human Rights Council Resolution 487. So we thank China and we thank other states who supported this, so that we can move forward and now address what Alaska, Hawaii, when you look at the background of why Alaska was independent and had such a strong case, when you hear why Francoise Hampson of the former subcommission on human rights stated publicly and in the open that the cases of Alaska and Hawaii are so strong, they have the right to sit like Palestine in the General Assembly as observers, and we have the right to participate with diplomatic powers. What does that mean? Article 1.2 says that equal right and self-determination of peoples, not of states. It means that peoples, and you look at the historical legislation, this refers to non-self-governing territories or other peoples who have this right. And we understand that there are other peoples recognized in the United Nations Security Council, in the General Assembly, and the United States and the West have promoted the right of self-determination for other peoples, but not for us indigenous peoples who are left behind. This so-called phrase, no one left behind, I posed the question because the former Director General stated in this room in a panel event that we need $4 trillion to implement the SDG goals. So if we need $4 trillion, where are they going to get it from? They'll have Western corporations go to indigenous territory, take the money, take the resource, and I said to them, don't use us as your piggy bank, or as Donald Trump said, Alaska is a resource warehouse of the United States of America. So we not only have crimes against humanity, we have theft of resource. So I believe that I've had my 10 minutes, but in closing,
Concluding, yes,
yes,
that's wonderful.
What we need to do is support all peoples have the right of self-determination by virtue of that right, etc., as written in Article 1 of the Common Covenants. If you look at Article 2 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, read that. You also look at Article 17, the right to property, which is not clearly defined in the ICCPR, but is more defined in the 1949 Geneva Conventions, which is what we have the right, and I've been promoting this through special procedures. So with that, I'll say thank you. And thank you, Alfred, for your work. Thank you, Majid, for your work. And we'll continue to pursue this. And we want your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Barnes, for that very much eye-opening presentation. What I would say is the states, the member states particularly, cannot shut their eyes on self-determination. It's a reality, and if you wish violence to go away, if you wish a peaceful world, self-determination is the answer to address people's grievances. That's the best way forward. As I said in my opening, self-determination is democracy, and democracy is self-determination. That's what the champions of human rights should accept, proceed, and allow it to flourish. That's the best way forward to see a peaceful world. Now, with these words, we have a couple of books here from our very great person, Building a Just World Order by Alfred Desires. I believe that you should seriously consider to have this book. And there is another book which is called Live Breaking News. And I think probably Alfred will be able to tell you more about this, what breaking news is there. But these are two publications of
That's right, it's a
Professor.
trilogy. Building came out in 21, Countering came out in 22, and in May we will have the third and last in the human rights trilogy under the title The Human Rights Industry. I could have called it the human rights apparatus, the human rights mechanisms, but it has become an industry. It's huge, it's all over. And it's our industry. It's not the industry, it's our industry. So we have a right to make sure that it works for us. And that you will see in the third and last of the trilogy. It is a very constructive book, it's a very optimistic book. I show what the problems are, but I also have a roadmap to fix it. And here, since the topic is self-determination, chapter 5 of this book is devoted to the theory and practice of self-determination. The entire chapter is only self-determination. And in the 25 principles of international order, which I formulated for the Human Rights Council back in 2018, and I published here as chapter 2, principle number 10 is the principle on self-determination. I will just read very briefly. The right of self-determination of peoples as stipulated in the Charter and in Common Article 1 of ICCPR is a fundamental principle of international law, jus cogens, and international public order of the public. All peoples, without exception, are rights holders of self-determination. The duty bearers are all states members of the United Nations. And then I go on to explain the implications of this principle. Now, I wanted to end with a note,
Very quickly, because I want to open it to the floor.
yes, the positive note I want to give you is that we can have self-determination and we can use the existing mechanisms to achieve it. Through politicking, it was possible to relist French Polynesia in the list of 17 non-self-governing territories that have to be examined by the General Assembly, by the Committee of 24, etc., etc. So you can relist territories that have been taken out of the list. Most importantly, in the context of decolonization, there is a very important judgment of the International Court of Justice in the case legal consequences of the separation of the Chagos Archipelago from Mauritius. The International Court of Justice ruled that the decolonization by the United Kingdom in 1965 was improper, it was inchoate, it was imperfect, had not followed international law rules, and that the peoples of the Chagos Islands had the right to return because they were expelled. And that the Chagos Islands actually belong to Mauritius. So you can have that. And there's another interesting case.
Alfred, you got to stop.
You have to stop because
No, just 1 minute. We have one question. Can we take one question, please? Yes, go on. Introduce yourself, please.
Thank you, panelists.
Very quickly, she is standing there.
My name is Tukaran. I'm a student, a master's student of General School of Diplomacy. In a states where there is a huge cultural diversity, for every 6 to 32 kilometers, there is a change in language, culture, tradition. In this case, self-determination will be a problem to a state, where recognizing every community will eventually lead a lot of crisis, or in few instances there are examples for separation from existing state. How can we see this with example?
Work on this.
Thanks.
Yes.
Very briefly, you have two methods of expressing self-determination. One is internal, by way of guaranteed rights. That is the Åland Islands case. If you know the Åland Islands dispute after the First World War, Åland Island is peopled by Swedes, 95%, but it's under the sovereignty of Finland. And that was allowed by the Council of the League of Nations only because Finland guaranteed absolutely all the rights of the Swedes. Right to language, to culture, to everything. Essentially, when you go to the Åland Islands, it's Sweden. It is formally part of Finland, but there's no attempt from Finland to restrict the rights of the people of Sweden. Problem is, if you have hostility, I mean, there's no hostility between the Swedes and the Finns, but if you have great hostility between two peoples, then the only solution really is to separate, to have a civilized divorce, like the Czechs and the Slovaks on the 1st of January 1993, they said goodbye to each other. And there was no bloodshed, no problem. It was a decision taken by civilized people. And there, the mediation of the United Nations, that's what's missing. We could have had this mediation in Ukraine, and we didn't have it.
Thank you, sir. Well, there we are. We had one question. Internal self-determination, I can conclude, is for cultural and social rights, is the answer. But for political rights, I believe it's much more than internal. It has to be considered even as an external. Well, thank you very much for being here. It's now almost 6 o'clock. We still have 1 minute, but thank you very much for all of you being here. And you have listened very patiently. You are extraordinary people, I would say, to be quite honest. And thank you, my panelists. We got 2 panelists through videos and audios. And we lost 1 panelist for whatever reason, I don't know. But thank you very much, Professor Alfred Desires, and thank you, Ambassador Roman Barnes, and thank you to all of you. With this, I conclude this meeting. Thank you.